Hi, I'm Rob Vanstone. Welcome to what I believe to be the 20th Leader Post Rider Rumblings podcast. I think we've hit a milestone today.
Is that glass? What's that anniversary?
Pewter, tin. We're at something. Yeah. Cardboard?
Cardboard, yeah.
That was the Leader Post Philharmonic Orchestra playing our theme song. We flew them in from Portugal just to play that for us today. It was very kind of them. It's also very kind of Carmelo Carteri. I could fill up the next 25 minutes just by talking about his business portfolio, his credentials, all-star, three-time descriptor of Roughrider Grey Cup victories.
There you go.
Businessman, humanitarian, legend. Carm, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for inviting me, guys. I was waiting for the running of the bulls. That sound just got me fired up. I'm thinking, holy smokes, in this little area here, you guys have fired it up. Yeah. Good music.
There'll be plenty of bull for the next 20 plus minutes, I assure you.
All right.
Most of it generated by our fine, albeit recently disparaged football reporter Murray McCormick. Thanks for being with us, Murray.
I think I learned from you, Rob, if one thing, if you can't inform, entertain. So that's what I'm going by today.
Oh, I'm over 2.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully you can up our percentage. Just a few things to talk about, as I think befits the time of year. It's we're closing in on the end of September, and the Roughriders are a lock for a playoff berth, which is always fodder for discussion this time of year. Now the discussion is not so much will they get there, but how far will they go, which certainly a departure from 2015, 2016. I'll just throw it out there.
Well, not even that. I think the big thing, Rob, is whether they're going to host a playoff game before that. I think that's the big thing for everybody here in Saskatchewan. Pretty fired up about this football team, whether you like the coach or not, or like the team or not. People are excited about this football team because they are playing exciting football. And the fact with the new stadium, I think everybody's excited to at least see the first playoff game, which if you would have asked any of us 3 years ago that the Riders would be hosting a playoff game, we probably would have taken bets against it. So kudos to the Riders right now for the position they're in. Now they still got to finish. Got an easy game this weekend going to Montreal, but I think all in all they've got things in their hands, and that's all any football team wants, is to be able to control their destiny by themselves. And this is a team that I think can handle it right now.
August 2nd, when the Riders lost 26-19 at Edmonton, one local columnist who shall remain anonymous said, well, the Riders dropped to 3-4 by losing that game. I said, well, so much for a home playoff game. So that's the kind of wisdom that I'm going to impart today. Murr, save the program.
Well, I think about talk about a home playoff. That's the only thing that's been missing from Mosaic Stadium. We've had concerts, we've had big games, we have opening ceremonies and closing ceremonies for events, but we haven't had a home playoff game. And I think we need to christen Mosaic Stadium with that kind of big atmosphere that'll be for a home playoff game. And the fact they're in this position where we're talking about the offense struggling still a little bit is kind of amazing. They kind of pulled out a game in Toronto where it should have gone the other way. Unfortunately for Toronto, it went Brett Lowther's way with a 56-yarder. You ever stood at the 56-yard line and looked down at the goalposts, how far away they are? It's a long, long way, and they're narrow, and it's just
it looks like a tuning fork from there.
To have a guy who can do that is just amazing. I just kind of looked on, wow, I don't know how they do that. That's half the field, really, and you kind of think about that when you try to put in perspective, and it's just with everything on the game. And then,
well, I remember in 07, I had an opportunity to stand on the field at Rogers Center, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna figure out exactly where it was that Dave Ridgway kicked that field goal. So with Dr. Bill Elliott at my side, I went and stood on the left hash mark at the 35, and Bill took my picture. And I looked at the goalpost, and you think 35-yard field goal, especially for Ridgway, that's nothing. But I looked at that and thought, can you imagine looking at those goalposts from 35 yards away, thinking, I got to hit that. And again, it looked a lot it looked a lot slimmer. So did I back then. So I can't imagine what it's like from 56.
Just to get back to that Toronto game, we're into the win, the Argo kicker. How much of a win was there? Was it a factor?
I think it was a factor. I think it was more win than you thought. It was more factor than the fans in the crowd.
Yeah.
Which was but it was a pretty good wind blowing in off the...
If you look at it, too, that was a really smart decision by Chris Jones, because he deferred to begin the game after winning the coin toss, and then to start the third quarter, he gave Toronto the ball so he could have the wind in the fourth. So not only did the Riders have the wind at their back for Lowther's field goal, Toronto was kicking against it. It was doubly beneficial as a result of the decisions made on 2 occasions following the coin toss.
Yeah, that was a good decision, and especially out east because the wind tends to die down later in the day too. Yeah. So that was a good call by Chris Jones for sure. Yeah. And how about when you talk about the Riders kicker? Is this guy their MVP of the year? I mean, I know it's early, but he's
it's never too early
for a kid who's like this whole football team, an unknown who's just stepped up. And there's been you talked about this offense not getting on track, and there are a lot of veterans there, but there's not a lot of consistency in guys playing together per se. The O-line's starting to gel a little more now, and you're seeing that. But other than Roosevelt, there's been a lot of in and outs, and then the big question a lot of people ask are, why isn't Thigpen playing more than he actually is? Well, I kind of like what they're doing. They're keeping him fresh and spotting him a little bit. And who knows, as you said, Rob, this is the time of year where now the football teams start to gel. You start to know who your key players are and who can make those big plays. And I think this is the final push for all the teams, but for the Riders in particular, I mean, they've got things going, and they're going into Montreal where everybody expects the Riders to win. Yeah. Unfortunately, those are usually the games where you really get surprised. But like I said earlier, the Riders are looking good right now going into that playoff push.
Remember, they lost to the
I know, and they were worse. They were a worse team. Montreal was at that time.
Yeah, they didn't have a quarterback. They didn't have, their defense was kind of struggling, and the Riders lost that game. You went, holy smokes! That was, I think, a columnist ripped them for that.
Yeah,
one.
I took some.
Was that Brendan Taman, or which columnist are you talking about? He's had some good rips lately.
Good one.
Yeah, he's had some good rips lately on a particular person. I don't know who, but it's been fun to watch.
Yeah, it's all
fun to read.
If he doesn't include the cut downs in his column, I make sure I insert them. I'm into self-loathing, and many people feel similarly about me.
Do you think a Montreal incident can happen again in Montreal, Rob?
What are your thoughts on Manziel, though, guys? I mean, it's something I've sat back and I thought, even in college, I thought this kid is a CFL quarterback, and I know he hasn't had the big game yet. I know he's got the pedigree to have a big game. Can he do it against the Riders this weekend? He's coming off a loss where I think he felt he should have played better. And he didn't play bad. He threw a couple bad picks late in the game, but I think he's a guy that knows how to move on and get better. And that's the big concern that I have going into Sunday.
Him and Nichols' numbers are almost identical from that game, too. They completed about 18 passes each. They had about 270 yards in passing. I think the big difference for Johnny Manziel is going to be if Montreal's offensive line can stop the Riders.
Yeah.
If the offensive line doesn't stop, it doesn't matter who's behind quarterback, he doesn't have a chance.
And he hasn't seen Chris Jones before.
And he hasn't. So I think he's really going to be in for. And he hasn't seen Charlton Hughes and Willie Jefferson and Chad Jeter and Zach Evans and Mike Kyle Brooks.
Guavin and the linebackers. I mean, they're flying around.
Like Winnipeg's defense is okay, this is a whole other level of defense, I think, for Johnny Manziel.
And fresh meat for Chris Jones as a quarterback who's never seen him before. You just can't deal with that. You can't process what it's like to deal with that until you face it for the first time.
And then you pile on the fact they have not a very good offensive line that can't protect them, and
marginal personnel overall.
Yeah,
this is like feeding paper into a shredder, or it should be.
Yeah. Well, okay. I think you said this about them when they played them last time.
They played here.
Too. I think you said guaranteed win.
It's not my fault I was wrong. It's their fault I was wrong. They should have won the game.
Well, for sure.
I don't accept any responsibility for that.
Yeah, that was. I still can't get over how they lost that one.
Well, David Watford pass hits goalpost. It was one of those days. But you look at Johnny Manziel. I'm not sure the question is, can he play? I think the question is, can he play, or can anybody play in Montreal? Like if you were to put Johnny Manziel on Edmonton or Calgary, I think there'd still be a learning curve. Yeah. But putting him in Montreal, it's like, okay, you've just got no accompaniment. It's like Frank Sinatra singing with a bunch of guys playing kazoos. Like, how do you make that work?
Well, Johnny Manziel is the type of player, I think, in watching him and reading him, he cherishes that. He likes that aspect of it. He thinks he can overcome it, and he thinks he can make people better around him. And I think that's the thing I'm waiting to see, because he's got the talent, to run around, to scramble. But as a defense, as you mentioned, Murray, when you know that, you got to play him that way too. You got to make sure you stay wide, keep your two guys inside in case he tries to run. But Manziel's he's a hell of an athlete, and I think the scary thing is he's coming off this loss. The pressure's on him. He kind of beaked at the organization a couple weeks back, and that didn't go that well from people I talked to in Montreal within that locker room, because Pitkin, is that the other
Antonio
quarterback?
Pitkin?
Yeah, he had that team. It was his team,
Yeah.
and as a player, Johnny Manziel should have just sat back and waited for his opportunity, but he was beacon that, hey, they brought me here to play, I want to play. So he's looking at it as a major challenge, and that's why I'm excited to watch this game Sunday, just to see how that team reacts. He will be at home. Is that going to be a difference? Got to remember, in Winnipeg, playing in that stadium, it was loud, pressure was on Nichols more than Manziel. I mean, Winnipeg came out and Montreal, I thought, fought pretty well for 3/4 of that game. And unfortunately, in the end, for Rider fans, Manziel couldn't pull it off.
I think his outburst was sort of sign of immaturity. Here's the
Immaturity is a good thing.
The Alouettes,
Or cockiness.
but the Alouettes had won 2 games in a row. Things are starting to look
I
good.
agree.
And you're thinking of your leader, regardless of who you are.
Yeah.
You come out and you support the team. You don't come out and say, "I should be starting. I should be doing this." And I thought, because I got to meet him for 20 minutes during the Hamilton game, and I did a one-on-one interview, and I came away very impressed by him. I was impressed by his maturity and his way he dealt with a difficult situation with a Hamilton quarterback. Mm-hmm. And then I'm reading those comments, going, "Oh boy,
yeah, that's not good."
This is maybe there's a reason why he's had this sort of stuff." And I'm going, because he has no sense of timing. Like as I said, you win 2 games in a row, you come back, you're supporting the team.
Yeah.
Anything Pipkin can do, I can do with him, and I'll watch him and do this. You don't say, "I demand to play, I want to play," and then Montreal plays him. And arguably, it may look back, if he stays around, they think they had to do, but I just found that to be a sign of a lack of leadership, and maybe a sign of maybe Johnny Manziel's got to.
Well, he's got a big head. There's no question. He went in there thinking he is the savior, because they brought him into Montreal and they gave him the keys and said, "Hey, this is your team. You're the guy." And then all of a sudden he gets hurt on a big play where he looked pretty good. He got nailed on the goal line and was concussed, and then. But you're right, when that second string guy, who now is the first stringer, comes in and does well, you got to just sit back and hope you get another opportunity. And in the CFL, you usually do. He shouldn't have been that vocal about it.
But he also made a big play on that pick when he went on the sidelines. And
made the hit. Yeah.
That's gutsy. That shows a quarterback, that sort of that drive, that he made a mistake and he wanted to atone for it. That's the kind of stuff Mike Riley would do. And so, having said that, he did do that good thing too. That good thing, and as I said, and he wasn't as bad as I thought he'd be against Winnipeg. When you kind of watch a little bit of it again and you see what he's doing. So,
well, you'll know what kind of pro he is on how they come out this Sunday, because now he's got a whole week to work with his first team offense, and he's again he's at home. I think that's going to be big for him, but he's facing a pretty good Rough Rider football team coming off a win.
You're a defensive player.
Yeah.
What's going on with the Rider defense?
Man,
has something changed?
Has it changed? No, I think the continuity in that front seven's awesome. When they're on, they're on. In the secondary, I don't understand the changes that this team makes at times when I don't think guys are hurt. And I think that's pertaining more to practice on who Chris Jones sees working hard at corner or halfback. But I think he's got his key pieces in that secondary, so now he can just have fun up front with all his puppets, because that's what they are to him. There's 7-8 guys that he just plays with, however he wants to make them dance. And right now they've been with him for a year and a half, most of this defense. So I think indirectly they're excited when they go to practice, because it's like, is it going to be my turn to blitz? I can't wait to go. They all can make plays, and I think this is what's evolved around this defense. It's taken a while, because you got to trust that other guy when you're blitzing. You got to make sure that other linebacker's got the back coming out of the backfield, or vice versa with the defensive ends, because they'll drop Charleston Hughes, who's leading the league in sacks, but you'll see him out in the flats with a running back once in a while. Well, until you get that continuity on defense, and he's got that now, and that's why I think they're taking it to another level. And Rob, as you mentioned, Manziel's got to face a Chris Jones defense now. That's where he gets to sit back, Chris Jones does now, in his office and just brew his little, okay, what am I going to do?
Salivating.
Oh, yeah. And the other thing, guys, is this whole, as an offense, what they'll do is they'll go, okay, and I'm just going to say this out, like the right guard's hurting, so this is where we need to blitz. They're going to be game planning for that Montreal, and I'm not saying their right guard sucks. I'm just saying,
as an example, that's what he'll do.
He's very good at that. That's what's impressed me, is when they come out with different packages, and I'm going, wow. But that secondary is intact, and they've played really well. He's got solid athletes they're lean up front, but that secondary, they're talented. They'll hit you. Great man-to-man coverage, and they all know where they belong.
And Iguavan and Moncrief,
they're
just they're just
even Sam Hurl. I know people forget about Sam Hurl's doing okay in the middle, and people had wonders. Lucius Parafoy has just been what an acquisition.
Yeah.
What I don't know what he does in the locker room or what leads to him being teams releasing him and not wanting him back, but boy, has he played well.
He has. He's been physical and he's made plays.
And he's the blitzing guy who can come from anywhere.
And he was a guy who, you're right, the question mark was, okay, why is everybody cutting this guy middle of the season? And is he a badass in the locker room or whatever? But, the Riders, that whole team's about a whole bunch of badasses. They're playing that way, that renegade type of football, and I think they love it within that locker room. They don't care what happens outside of it. It's about them in there, and when you get that formula going for you guys, that's a dangerous thing for opposition teams.
And this is when it's supposed to peak. I mean, it's year 3 of the Chris Jones regime.
That's right.
It's go time for this team, especially at this juncture of the season. Okay, this is what they've been building toward. Let's see it.
But Rob, week 3 or 4 when they lost a couple, all of a sudden you felt like he's lost the team already. Yeah. And that's what I talked about, that continuity, that trust within the team, and it takes a while to get it, and it's up to the coaches to try and find that. And I think the Riders are lucky that they got it, because there is, you listen to people in here. There's people ready to hang this organization earlier in the year, but they're coming together now, and that's all you can ask.
How could those people have been so negative?
Speaking of negative, I happened to notice that Duron Carter was playing for Toronto on the weekend.
God, I felt bad for him. I really did.
Not even targeted. What is Mark Trestman trying to prove?
Yeah, that as a fan, it disappointed me. Not, I don't, Duron's been here, but I wanted to see, especially when S.J. Green went down, and all of a sudden you got their number one receivers in the locker room, and Duron's on the sidelines, and he wanted to be saying something, but he was just sitting there being coy there. But I thought there was an opportunity to really use him, especially against the Riders, and let him do his thing. I mean, isn't that why he's there?
Isn't Mark Trestman supposed to be a genius?
Well, maybe
How do you not play that card?
I know.
Did he want him, Rob?
Pretty clearly that was a Jim Pop move.
Jim Pop brought him into Montreal 4 or 5 years ago. So, that's where, I don't know.
But here's how not to sell football in Toronto. You got 14,000 people only there. You don't hype the game at all. Duron Carter isn't going to say anything controversial. I'm sure Mark Trestman put the lid on that. Then you don't play him and create any excitement when your marquee quarterback is probably gone for the rest of his career. In the meantime, John Tavares is playing for the Leafs. Kawhi Leonard is just being introduced with the Raptors, and the Argos are now 3-9, and they're not using arguably one of the top
somebody
10
who wants to be there. Kawhi Leonard, I don't know if he wanted to be there, but Tavares wants to be there. But I think
how not
Carter,
to sell football in Toronto?
Exactly.
Just tone deaf.
I remember back when this season started, we thought we might see once in a generational type player in Duron Carter. The fact he could play both ways and contribute. And it was so exciting to see this opportunity. And who would have believed he'd have? Does he have? I think he has a little over 100 yards catching. I can't remember if it's even that. Yeah. And he's been absolutely, other than my devotion to writing many, many stories about him. Yeah. He hasn't done anything other than that. So,
well, and it was disappointing then as a fan. I was wondering, here's a guy, and Caleros gets hurt. And what do? You take your best receiver, put him on defense for a young quarterback coming in who needs that help. And then he plays defense for, I think, 4 games. Then Caleros comes back, and he didn't even play. Then that's when they basically got rid of him. Then it was like something
that was just that was a bad vibe right from the start of the year, wasn't it?
Yeah, I don't get it, because I thought from all reports, Chris Jones and them, they were having their meetings and everything was cool, and I didn't hear any issues in the locker room. And not that I hang around the team like I used to, but it was everybody from who I talked to didn't have a problem.
Well, the thing is, they're 5-1 without him, so those numbers obviously validate the move. Yeah. But they have yet to get a touchdown. It's been 13 games now. Yeah. They have yet to get a touchdown from anybody playing wide receiver this season. The wide receivers on Saturday for the Roughriders combined for 3 catches. Shaq Evans had 2, and Devon Bailey had 1, which was a pretty massive play. They're not getting anything from their wide receivers, like zero.
But they're blocking well.
They're blocking well.
Then leave Rob Bagg in there, and that opens up an American somewhere else. Because I think Rob was on the he started for 2 games that nobody even knew.
He didn't start. He was dressed.
Oh, did he play much?
And that Winnipeg, he was on the field from Gator, returned the pick, and then he played a little bit after that. So he's blocking a lot.
Okay, well, it doesn't make sense. But who's to argue? I mean, they have that formula, they have that brew going right now. Yeah. It's getting Halloween time. That's really the masters at Mosaic right now are potting it out.
Interesting to have a bye week during Halloween week.
Mark Melnichuk, our fine. What's your title, Mark? Producer? What do we call you? Just call you Mark? Producer. Marky Mark? He's giving me the 2-finger sign, which is one more finger than people usually give me. Yes. I think that means 2 minutes. So let's get into the final thoughts. Carm, any general thoughts you'd like to share about life, about football, about love, about politics, anything?
In 2 minutes. I want to congratulate Marty Klein, your former boss here at the Leader Post, for that great new job in Ottawa. Hopefully I get a chance to go visit him. But no, all in all, I've enjoyed just kind of having a pretty mellow summer, not having to work with Murray for, had to do that for 28 years, doing that shift. So no, just being a fan, having fun and enjoying whatever summer we have left. That's it. And looking for a good Rider run here at the end to keep all of Saskatchewan warm.
Murr, keep us warm. What have you got for final thoughts?
I'm loving the triple header Saturdays. I know I don't have it, but what a great way to just sit and watch football. I know some people it clears the path to watch the NFL, but
ding.
What?
He liked it. He liked that.
Oh, sorry. But I just and they were
path to watch the NFL on Sunday.
The BC Lions game, it was over. It was lights out.
We never talked about that brutal non-call. Kick the field goal.
Exactly. Punted out of bounds. Yeah. He took the worst of 3 options.
Yes. And you're sitting there going, this is after 3 hours of watching, 9 hours or more than that of watching great football. Yeah. What a great advertisement. I know it happens on a Saturday, and unfortunately Saturdays are busy days for people with lives. Yeah. I've heard. But what a great idea, and I agree. I don't know if there's more ahead. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I really like the triple header Saturdays, and the Steelers won last night, so we're almost as good as the Browns. No, we're better than the Browns, aren't we?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah,
Broncos are 2-1, and I'm disillusioned.
We got 1-1-1. That never looks right on the standings.
And now I have to adhere to protocol again, established by our producer, whatever his title is, Mark Melnichuk. This is a message to all viewers, if I can indeed refer to them in the plural. Please rate us on iTunes and leave a review. It helps us grow the podcast. So please rate us on iTunes.
What does that mean, Rob? Can you explain that to me?
I have no idea. Mark, how do you rate us on iTunes?
I rate us number 1.
He doesn't want. He's a reluctant participant in this.
I think we're number 1 in
today.
iTunes.
When people look up the podcast on there, they'll see it.
Okay, so you look it up there, and look up the podcast on iTunes, and it'll have a little rate the thing. Rate the podcast. Please don't rate Murray and I. Rate Carm.
Buy a paper.
I will now signal us out somewhat relievably after I've wrecked the last minute. For Carmelo Cartieri, thanks so much, Carm, for being with us. It's an honor.
My pleasure, guys. Lots
of
fun. Thank you.
And Murr, thanks for being here with Carm.
It was an honor. Carm and I have spent many a time together. You see me some nights coming home late on the road.
And I forget my name at the moment, but thanks for being with us, and we'll do number 21 next week. Take care.